you're right, Bill. There is some. I could be wrong about compacting. Either way, I worked at both of those studios in the 80s. The
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
Pretty sure it was compact though. There is
Might have been. I might be wrong.
Tie.
You know, I might be
Compact was
thinking
in
here,
Houston. Well,
here
maybe
near
they
where
made
I
one.
live, Apple bought out a Hewlett-Packard facility, and they're transforming it into something else.
Yeah.
So I might have been thinking about that.
It's very interesting to watch the growth and demise of corporate studios through the 80s and the 90s. Really interesting because they would build up and then they would lay off staff. Then they would bring in freelance staff for a period of time. And then eventually they would shut down. And everybody did it, including Apple. Apple had a great facility on bandwidth.
You know, it's so interesting you say that, Chris, because I've seen that play out with some of my pharmaceutical clients, with DuPont back in the day. They thought they were saving money, and then they realized, oh, we can't run this. This is way too expensive.
Well, the biggest problem with a company doing that is they get this incestuous sort of relationship with all of their creative because it's all in-house and there's no growth and creativity. So for a company to be able to hire any director at any time, they get more influence into their internal productions. When you have a department, it just everything looks and feels exactly the same, and that may not be best for the company.
Also, there's a fear of failure. If it's in-house production, nobody wants to make any waves. So nobody will go out on the edge or go outside the box because they're afraid of getting fired. And if they hire an outside contractor, you know, they don't have that fear.
I used to explain to people when we were working for a lot of these companies that we're the red shirts. Like you just know that as a contractor, if anything goes wrong, we're the ones they're gonna leave behind,
Yeah.
propped up against a rocket.
I would openly tell producers, I go, look, you can always blame me. You don't ever fall on a sword. I'm here to cover you. All I ask is that you quietly hire me again next time. I have many red shirts. I can dye in all of them.
This is a completely new and upgraded Chris Fenwick. Vastly superior to that last guy.
It pays to not be a person who is recognized by the upper management. You don't need to introduce me. I'm just furniture here. I'm here to make you look
That's the way
good.
they did it. That's the way they did it on Star Trek. It's the same extras would get it with the red shirt from episode to episode. I said, wait a minute, I've seen that guy.
A client of mine was a stuntman in Blade, and he's like, I lost count of the number of glass windows I went through over the course of like Blades 1, 2, and 3.
The Wesley Snipes series, yep.
Yeah, that was their go-to stunt, throwing somebody through a window.
There's the Infinite Loop, there's the Juniper, and there's Apple Park on the other side of the freeway. And 95% of what happens at Summit will be at Juniper. They have very little access to Apple's campus.
No, typically they bus everybody over. The buses show up at the Juniper and then...
For half an afternoon, yes.
Yes.
They don't beam them in from the saucer section?
Generally not. Instead of the huge holodeck in the center, they did more landscaping.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion, and our second hour today will be general discussion as well. 2 hours of that. So this is a great week or a great day to ask questions. So go ahead and throw those into Makana. And today is the graphics day. So if you want to lean towards graphics questions, we're ready. We're ready to answer your questions there. So if you've got questions that in that area, go ahead and throw those in. Of course, if you have any other general questions, you can throw those in as well. So let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Mitch, what do we have?
Thank you, Alex. First in, Alan Jones from Vicenza, Italy. My friend is experiencing challenges focusing when trying to shoot pics and videos at night with her 14 Pro, specifically moonshots over an ocean and fireworks video. Zoom is sometimes involved. Does anyone here experience this too? And if so, what's the solution?
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm not at all surprised at this. So the iPhones are particularly notable for their computational photography skills. There's a pretty powerful chip in there. But in order for it to do computational photography, it has to understand what's in the scene. And with a lack of light, that becomes difficult. The new phones obviously have LiDAR, but obviously LiDAR is not going to do anything for you when you're talking about shooting the moon or fireworks that are hundreds and hundreds, potentially thousands of feet away. It doesn't have any data to grab onto. Now, you can do some things if you know kind of something at the same distance and can find it in your frame and touch on it. It will lock focus. Focus lock is one of the things the iPhones do. So you might be able to use that manual focus capability to improve your shots, but it's always going to be difficult in low light situations for the automated systems to work as well as they do with a lot of light. They're pretty stunning with a lot of light, but without light, not so stunning.
Go ahead, Chris.
Alan, I have to say this kind of rings of one of these comments like, Apple can't do something that's absolutely impossible. I hate Apple. I mean, to be fair, it's a very difficult photo. I've seen some amazing ones, and I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure how they do it, but it just the sound of that question just kind of struck me as funny. That's just impossible. Why can't it do it?
Go ahead,
it's a
Jason.
tough photo.
Well, it's an even tougher way to do video. All smartphones are pretty wide to begin with. And, to get the picture you're imagining, I think you actually need more zoom than you think you need. And the iPhone does fall down when it comes to some serious zoom. I'd be sure that I'm not in cinematic mode. It could be that it's using its computational photography to jerk away your focus. Other than that, I would try one of the better recommended, video apps that aren't from Apple. See if that helps.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, I've even seen some digital cameras with fireworks mode on the settings for it for the amateurs. So that's one thing. But the basic thing is turn off autofocus, set it on infinity if you can, if you have enough control over your camera, and set the exposure. If you want to have something in the foreground, set exposure for that. And then the fireworks may just go over a little bit. But if you set your focus on infinity, it won't be searching for focus once you shoot the moon or shoot the fireworks, because they're going to be at infinity. And if you're close enough to not be on infinity, you're standing too close to the fireworks.
Yeah, Infinity, taking the autofocus off, I would use either Filmic or Halide would be the software that I'd probably use with an iPhone. And I put on a tripod, heavy tripod. So it may seem like hand holding something like this will be very, very difficult. You're taking a hard shot and making it impossible. But you can get I've gotten some pretty good results out of it with moons and with fireworks. But it has to do with either letting it completely go out. The fireworks, you can let it just go. It'll just do it. But with a moonshot, you really have to, you want to put a tripod on, you want to manually focus it, turn off then you can zoom in and carefully craft the shot. Next question.
Next question from Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina. Has anyone made use of programmable NFC stickers, and do they work? There's a link to it on Amazon. I think they're $15 a pack.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I absolutely have. One of the easiest ways that I've used, I was telling Mitch before the show, is to set an automation and for my washing machine. So, set a timer for 37 minutes and I just boot my watch or boot my phone onto it, and I have a countdown that's preset and really easy. I've also used it for access control with existing corporate badges. It's easy to add NFC to that with, a tiny little sticker.
Go ahead, Michael.
It's funny, I opened up this link on Amazon, and funnily enough, I purchased this exact pack a year ago today. So I can confirm that they do work. We use them for our sporting events that we broadcast. We do have some kind of like voting interactions that go on, and so we'll have people tap to be able to access that website and put their votes in. I will recommend the NFC Tag Writer app. There are other apps available, but that's been the most successful for me.
And is that on Mac or PC?
It's on iPhone, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's a tag writer app, and you just tap it, and then it programs it to do what you want it to do.
Yeah. So basically in the app, you have a bunch of different options, whether you want it to be a URL or whether you want to actually like embed other types of items. And then you just tap it and it writes it to it. It'll confirm whether it happened or not. You can verify, and it's set.
Interesting. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I bought a set of these about 8 or 9 years ago. Played with them for a while. Then I got a phone that was wireless charging and didn't support NFC anymore, so I stopped playing with them. Now my phone supports NFC, but you bear that in mind. There are a lot of phones out there that don't support NFC. More and more these days do, but about 5 or 6 years ago, it was hit or miss.
Next question.
Next one in from David Brady in New York, New York. Looking for a low barrier to entry solution for generating HLS streams for our internal digital signage solution. What products, hardware, and software should I start leaning into?
Go, Jason.
Okay, this is a very low-end solution, but that's kind of what I like about it because I've found that it's pretty stable and pretty reliable. Posterbooking.com is designed to be used with any screen at all. It can be manipulated and programmed remotely, and you can use it with those cheap Fire Sticks that you thought you were going to be using that you bought for some reason at some point during Amazon Prime Day. They can be remotely monitored.
Does it receive it? Or
it receives.
Or generate it? Oh, yeah. I think he wants to generate it. So it's like he wants to encode an HLS.
Oh, well, this isn't going to help then.
The only reason I popped that up is when I first read it, I was thinking about all these decoders. And then I read it again. I was like, oh, no, it's encoding that he's trying to do. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, BrightSign has a pretty big ecosystem, encoding and decoding in various flavors. Take a look there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about basic HLS, I mean, you're generating it, and then you have to figure out how you want to manage that. At this point, most things could do 1080p. You probably take the Melee Quieter 3 is probably powerful enough to generate an HLS stream. The way that most people would do it, if they're going to, of course, you could do it with something like, lots of things will do HLS. So you have OBS could produce that on that, as well as you could have OBS, but the one that if you're building something kind of straight to the metal would be FFmpeg. Now there are specific pieces of hardware. One place that you might want to look is cnx-software.com. And so CNX makes these, it's embedded systems, and they make, this is a, let's see if I can pull this up for you here. This was sent to me by someone who knows an incredible amount about what she's doing. in HLS. So anyway, this is the encoder. Now this will take 5 4K 30 HDMI inputs and encode them in HLS there. So you'll see this is an embedded system that's designed, and so this is going to be, and here you can see it supports all of these formats here. So it will do a lot of this on its own. It's not a very expensive piece. They also make boards, I believe. There's a lot of different ways, and even monitors. cnx-software.com is probably one way if you're really looking for something low level. And then you can be using what it has there. FFmpeg is an option as far as what you use there. So take a look at that. But I would check that out. And I lost my video. Let's go to the next question. Bill,
next question coming in from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. The Tour de France Femmes just started stage 3 today. Same announcers and still on Peacock. What will it take for it to catch on?
So it's a very difficult shoot, the Tour de France. I actually have a friend who works for ITV as a stringer, and he worked the Tour de France main thing. It is literally logistically one of the most complicated things because the Tour de France takes so much distance. I mean, literally it can kind of cross country borders and you're going up mountains and things like that. And most of the time the coverage is continuous. So they have an extraordinary infrastructure to do that. It is a very expensive show. And it has a huge budget commensurate with that. For the women riders who are amazing athletes, I'm just not sure that it's going to take some serious sponsorship and some serious viewership for them to double that effort every year. And maybe in the era that we're looking at, I mean, everybody's talking about the Barbie movie and what an amazing financial success it's been because women just said yes and men said yes too. I want to see what Greta Gerwig did with this film. It may be the era where we see more things that, more balance, just as the soccer world is getting more balance now between the male and female teams. Maybe we'll see the same thing going on with this. Courtney has some thoughts. Courtney?
Yeah, I just think the sport of bicycle racing isn't that keen. Maybe it isn't. Of course, in France, it's probably a lot more popular, but something like a marathon or the Tour de France, it lasts a long time. You only really care about who wins. And so if you're watching, it's hard to maintain an audience for that period of time because I don't think there's that much excitement and back and forth and jockeying for position because usually a leader pulls out ahead somewhere near the beginning and stays there for most of the competition. And so it's kind of boring, I think. And so I think to attract an audience for that and marathons, we have coverage of the LA Marathon every year, and I'm not sure how many people watch that. It's only carried on one of the independent channels. So I'm not sure how great the audience is for something like that to maintain coverage.
Let's go to Alan.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm assuming the question is implying what's it going to take for it to catch on in the United States, because it is pretty big in Europe, as Courtney was saying, in France and Europe. It is a pretty big event. It was big for a while during that whole Lance Armstrong era. And, with the controversy surrounding him, I think it's going to take another heroic figure coming from the United States in order to get it to catch on. But as, again, everybody's kind of saying, I don't think Americans have the attention span for it, right? And it's just not a local event. So until we get an American in there, it's probably going to be a little side note.
Yeah, it's a very interesting show because it takes place over, 5 days or something like that. So you've got the actual riding, the sports performance, if you will, during the day. But then you've got hours and hours where they're off and the audience has to be motivated to come back, particularly in those middle stages. There was always some kind of, they're in the Pyrenees or something, so it's really rough going. And I think that was interesting for the people who are seriously interested in that, but it's a tough one. Let's go to the next question.
From Bobby Rafferty in Florida, now that DaVinci Resolve 18.5 is out of beta, what are the thoughts on this release?
And Alex, you're back. Is your mic working okay?
Yep, I'm good to go.
Good.
The camera just turned off. I don't know why. Go ahead, Jason.
All right. It's only been out for, a day or two. And what I've been most impressed by is the AI-based, it's far down on this page, but, the AI-based audio classification is surprisingly good. Also, super scale, they're not kidding, is much faster. And that is, as far as I can tell, one of the very best ways to not lose sharpness when you're scaling up.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Jason, do you know what they mean by audio classification?
Yeah. So you know how you label your audio tracks, like, dialogue, sound effects, B-roll, music, orchestration, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of what they're trying to do.
So I think it's interesting. I think that more and more, especially in the last year, 9 months, whatever, I personally am getting tired of people shoehorning the phrase AI into every
yes,
every
but this
ad,
one works.
every PR. I mean, Final Cut has had that for 6 years, and they didn't bother calling it AI. It's it's what you do.
Well, they have classification. Is it automatic? I've never seen it work automatically.
Yes. It can. Yes. So anyway, I find, maybe I'm the only one. I probably am, but it's just like, yeah, we have to call everything AI. I have AI in my sock drawer. I mean, come on, give it up.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I love Resolve. I think it's a great program. It's ultimately going to beat everybody. I think it's just a matter of time. And I go back to it every once in a while from my Premiere Pro, and I see great features that they keep adding. Some of them work great, some not so much. So like so many different programs out there, I'd like to see less features like AI and more tightening up of some of the things that are cool, but just don't always work quite right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Resolve has become pretty powerful. And when we talk about updates, I guess the Final Cut update has not been the most successful update that Apple's had. So there's been a lot of gnashing of teeth online. I didn't upgrade it yet. I was just kind of watching. I'm watching all the volleys, but the I think that the three editors that I think are really the leaders, in my opinion, are Avid owns a huge part of of broadcast television and film production. I think Resolve is very high end and is adding features and not just features, but capability faster than anyone else. And I think Final Cut has a different way of doing things that's a lot faster in many projects than both of the other two. And so I feel like those three have real, I feel like all three of them have a real place in the world. The one that I don't really understand as much is Premiere. I think Premiere was what everyone went to after Final Cut went to Final Cut 10. But I feel like I don't understand how that. I mean, I think it fits in as an inertia because you got the Adobe suite, But I think that it's pretty buggy. I opened it about a year ago and crashed it a bunch of times, and I was just like, oh, okay, I'm just not going to use this anymore. Because I had to open some project, and I was like, oh, I'm just not going to. We'll hire somebody to do this. It was really not a great experience for me. And so that's the first time I'd opened Premiere in 10 years. And maybe it was just what I was doing, but it immediately didn't like to do that. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just saying I had all sorts of difficulties with the migration to the new operating system when I was back on my Intel laptop. I do think this Apple Silicon initiative and the fact that the chips are now substantially different and faster, I've had almost no difficulties on my M series laptop now. It was just night and day in terms of fluidity, and I think they're building toward the software of the future. Apple's always done that. They try their best to keep the old stuff working as long as possible, but when they do make a significant shift forward, if you're not ready to come along with them in hardware, it gets more and more difficult, and that's kind of been my experience with this. New computer solved a lot of things.
Next question.
Next question from Tony Denson in Leeds. OBS virtual camera on versions later than version 27. Does anyone here have this working? I've been trying for 2 years.
I don't know. What I will tell you is that, and we were talking about it before the show, OBS adds a lot of latency to your camera feed. So I would be very careful to add. I think OBS adds both latency and instability to your live feed, and it's probably not something I would use as a virtual camera. So I think that using it for streaming, I think is fine. I think using it as a virtual camera, I think we just see a lot of idiosyncrasies. Some people get it working and they leave it in a stable state, but we see green frames and a lot of other things that pop up and glitches. And so I think that I wouldn't use OBS as a virtual camera. I wouldn't recommend it. Next question.
Jacob Goodnight in Indianapolis, Indiana. What are the best practices when using a Blackmagic HyperDeck Studio to play back videos for live events? I've noticed MP4 files are unstable even if resolution, bitrate, and frames per second are consistent. Do you recommend only using ProRes?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, ProRes or DNX HD should work fine. Both the ProRes, if you do it in ProRes HQ if you want high quality, or just regular standard ProRes. The problem with MP4 is it's H.264, and there's so many different flavors of it. It only supports, I think, one of those many flavors. So if you didn't encode it on the HyperDeck Studio, if you didn't record it on that HyperDeck Studio, it may not be able to play it back because it's very picky about the resolution and frame rate and, you know, all the different flavors of compression, because it only has one or two different types of decoders on H.264, H.265. So record it on there. It should play back fine, or just use ProRes or DNX HD if you have that capability, if you have an Avid or something.
Go, Jason.
Most of the time, my HyperDeck rack is used for ISO recording when I'm doing live events, not for live playback. I tend to want to use MIDI and an SDI card playout to do that. That said, the first rule is you throw everything through Edit Ready or through Hedge or through Compressor. You standardize it to something that is not a mezzanine codec. It instead is actually frame for frame. You make sure it's completely standardized, and then you make sure it absolutely, positively works.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I agree with Courtney. The picking one format, one frame rate, everything is the secret to getting through the HyperDeck world. And I think ProRes is the most stable of all of them because it only generally comes from Apple. So the H.264 can be a problem because it's just a little more finicky in terms of the various versions of it.
Yeah, I would never try to do H.264 through a hardware device. Now, we do playout in a pinch. We will do playout of H.264 from something like, we use Softron on the air because it supports 10-bit, and we need to have a 10-bit playback system. So, for what I do, so we use that, and in that case, we use ProRes HQ. But we, you know, in a pinch, if we have to send a countdown clock or something, but we wouldn't play anything out that matters in H.264 or MP4. What we typically have on site are HyperDecks that are ready to play the things that we knew we were going to play, so that we can activate them. And then we have a Softron on the air that is there to handle things quickly because we can just load it in and hit play. So those are the two things that we use the most for those processes. And again, all of that's in 10-bit, which means it's all in HQ. But I have just a setting in Compressor. And I don't care what you send me. Even if you send me something that says ProRes HQ, I'm still going to throw it on that compressor setting because there's little bits that can be changed. The number of channels, the number, and everything down there. There's nothing that says automatic on my settings. It's all just, this is the way I'm going to have it pop out the other end. It's going to be this many tracks of audio, this many. It has to be, all of them have to be identical for the HyperDeck to work properly. So I just have a setting there and I just push them all through. You could probably do that with those H.264, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend, if you're not doing 10-bit, 422 is just fine. And if you're doing 10-bit, then HQ. And then if you're doing key fill out of a HyperDeck, then of course need Apple ProRes 4x4. Next question.
Jacob Goodnight from Indianapolis, Indiana, asking, has anyone tried Piffin's new Connect Unify service for Teams and Zoom-based productions? Seems like an easy-to-use solution for producing high production value events in the cloud. Any downsides?
Go ahead, Chris.
Jacob, I personally have not used it, but I know that Jonas has. He's often here on Fridays. I'd highly recommend you ask the same question on Friday. He'll give you the lowdown.
Yeah, I would definitely ask or you can ask in Discord. It definitely looks like an interesting platform. The pricing seemed a little heavy the first time they at least showed it to us. So that'd be the only thing I'd say. Next question.
From Dale Napata from Oakland, California, asking, Alex, I saw a poster at a movie theater saying Metallica is performing live for 2 nights in Arlington, Texas, and it will be shown in theaters worldwide. Are you involved with this event, August 18th and 20th?
I am not involved in this event, but I have streamed at theaters and I have streamed Metallica. so I've done all the different pieces, but not this one specifically. What I will say is probably going to be a great show. It'd be really interesting to see. I'm probably going to go just to see what they do there. I'm trying to see. Trying to figure out who they're using for this live stream. It looks like my guess is that it's interesting. Oh, Trafalgar. So it's probably not live. Trafalgar doesn't do, as far as I know, Trafalgar doesn't do live. So what they do is it's broadcasted live. but it's a tape. so Trafalgar does tapes. So I don't think that Trafalgar does a live network output. They do live events, so they'll have it feel like it's live. I'm sure it'll be a great experience, but it's not really live from Arlington. I don't think, unless they've changed their system dramatically, which is possible. But when they did one of the Korean bands, and I just can't think of it right now. But they did a Korean band, and that was also recorded. It made a lot of money though. It was a really successful stream. Go ahead, Bill.
Someone's invoked Metallica, so somebody on the show must do rock on.
Yeah, the one thing to look at is there's a new part of this tour that they just did. There is a new behind the scenes on YouTube that is stunningly good. Stunningly good. There's actually a whole, I just found it over the weekend. There is a entire channel dedicated to behind the scenes of different tours. But they did a tour. They're talking about the entire pipeline of the Metallica tour. And so I think if you search for Metallica X2 behind the scenes, I think you'll see it. And again, there's this whole channel that's dedicated to it. It's about 25 or 30 minutes long, and really good video. Like it's sometimes a little long in places, but in general, there's a lot of behind the scenes, and they really get into a lot of the nitty gritty of what it takes for them to do those things. And they were listing their audio. Their audio is, they have a primary, backup, tertiary, emergency. They had 4-way. I mean, like the emergency backup for their audio chain is analog. Like literally analog cables. I don't know how well it would work, but it would be like they have a lot of backups. So anyway, it's really interesting. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, staying with Metallica, the Metallica M72 World Tour, live from Texas. Event is being shown later in some markets to suit local time zones. How are they delaying the content to play it out later? Would they be using an EVS or similar, or would they be sending DCPs out?
So the DCP process would take a while. So I don't think that they would do that. Again, I don't think it's live. I think that they're just doing play out. So it won't be hard for them to play out at different times there. Now, they may be sending DCP out to all of the theaters to give you the live experience. But again, I don't believe that Trafalgar is sending out something live. I think they're broadcasting something out. So that wouldn't be very hard for them to do. If you're doing it if they were doing it from an actual live show, which maybe they are, I don't know anything about the back end of this, you would use an EVS, and we have used things for time shifting across different networks or different time zones. EVSs are really useful in broadcast. So for instance, a lot of times you might see a show on the East Coast that's live in the East Coast. They will edit it all in an EVS and then play it back out again before it broadcasts in the West Coast, because they'll make corrections. So the West Coast is slightly cleaner than the East Coast sometimes. And so, but I think in this case, they would probably just play it out if they were using a network. But I have a sneaky suspicion that all the theaters might have DCPs. Next question.
From Chris Fenwick in Emeryville, California, and right here in our panel, Alex, how is your quest for a new password manager going? Did you receive my recommendation this weekend from Amazon?
I have it here. Chris sent me a password book. This is the password book from Amazon that I could write my passwords in. There it is. There's Chris's password book, and I have the password book. Now, we did discuss the fact that I would never write my passwords in a piece of paper, but Chris feels that this is, it probably would be good for my parents.
So
I will admit, my
my
parents have Post-its everywhere, so this would probably be a better solution to have them all in one place, written and organized.
For the record, Post-its are fine as long as you post them on the back of the monitor. Also, you need, I think this is a joke. I don't know, maybe not. But did you read all of the icons at the bottom of the screen here, or the bottom of the label here? Number one, it says untitled for security. Number two, alphabetized tabs, pretty and functional is bullet number 3. Take control, bullet number 4, and stay organized. But I love it. Untitled for security.
Meaning it doesn't say passwords on the front.
Well, only on the label. This paper label comes off when you unwrap it.
It just has a little wolf on it. It's a wolf. It's the password wolf?
It's the Clever Fox password book.
Clever Fox. Sorry, Fox Wolf.
So it might be a wolf, but I would imagine it's probably a fox,
Fox.
considering it's called Clever Fox.
A little pen holder.
I mean, that's the way I would do the branding. You might do it differently, Alex. You're entitled.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't have. It doesn't have. Oh my gosh. It doesn't have a thing on the outside, but if you're able to open it, it says website, username, password, hint. It even has the password and the hint, and then notes, and then and there's a section that you just have to jump to, which is very important. Like,
so if anybody's interested,
you're very important information.
Hit me up in Discord. I'll send you a link. I found it on Amazon. You could probably find it too, unless your Google is completely broken.
It has a very it does, to keep it from opening accidentally. It has a very high secure, this little rubber band here, it keeps it from just flying open. It's all there.
So if I may, so I was just informed, this does lead to something serious. I was just informed the other day that we have assigned one of our producers to be our, she called herself the cybersecurity czar or something. One of our clients has upped their requirements of how we manage our passwords. And I thought that was a bit draconian. But have you ever heard of this, where a client that you've worked for, that they want to send an auditor to figure out how we're managing our passwords?
Mm-hmm.
They also have somebody who apparently they want to come and check how we're doing our laundry and check which laundry soap we're using.
They didn't say,
which I thought was strange.
They left the laundry out, but I've absolutely, we had to certify that we had done all the little, we had to do a 3-hour like multiple choice, whatever, it's one of those videos that you had to watch about security. And then we had to sign up for a thing that automatically tests you all the time. So it's constantly sending you phishing schemes that will report back that, hey, they clicked on something they shouldn't click on and everything else. And so you were constantly under attack, to make sure that you were vigilant in that area. And then we had to manage not only how we manage passwords, but how we manage the entire network, how our space was configured, the alarm systems, the cybersecurity, how we managed email, I've definitely, that was just one client.
And yet, I may point out, and this is all I'll say about this, don't be alarmed, Alex. And yet, I guessed the password of the rear gate at Oh No No. I'm just going to guess
that. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it had a little lock on it, like, my diary did that your sister used to have when she was 6 years old. Yeah. Have a little lock that you could lock it up to first, extra secure.
Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
I was just going to say, everybody knows it's way more convenient to put them on the whiteboard in the conference room. Come on, people.
Exactly. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, the irony is not lost on me that we've shown this book for the last 3 minutes on office hours. Why don't you just hold it up a little longer so everybody knows what book to go to first?
Yeah, exactly.
There it is.
I recommend when you go into, I'll just put a bunch of stuff in here. I would never do this. So I will put fake stuff in. It's a really good idea. What I should do is just have this like sitting there, and it should just be all fake passwords. I can just fill them out with random stuff.
Every password is monkey123.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be funny if you had a book like this and had all the websites, but in all the passwords, it was just the same password. It was like password 123. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
So the last step there is, sure, it would make a great decoy book, but what you actually need to do is on each page, just sprinkle a little bit of that fingerprint powder that's impossible to get off, right? So that you can tell who's been wanting your decoys.
Or we could just do name of the rose and go all the way down that path. All right. Just a quick reminder that you can ask questions throughout this. We're doing 2 hours of Q&A or 1.5 hours or 1 hour and 15 minutes of Q&A, depending on how many questions you ask. So if you want to throw some questions into Makana, go ahead and do that right now. Of course, vote on those questions. We've got Alan McKay here, is here, and he is Alan Hawks. Sorry, Alan. My brain is like, I've known Alan for a long time, and my brain gets a little jacked up there. So Alan Hawks is here, and he is an incredible 3D artist, and so he's got lots of questions, lots of answers. If you've got CG questions, Michael Flotron is here, and he is new to our. So we have to test him. So go ahead and ask live streaming questions. Put him to the test here, and so we've got a lot of new folks, new faces, and some of the regular faces. So go ahead and ask those questions, and let's go ahead and jump into the next question.
Dave Kaufman from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Apple just announced that developers can get early access to test their applications at various centers around the world. What does the panel think the first AR apps will be?
Good, Bill.
I think they're building out their infrastructure. As Vision Pro rolls out, obviously it's going to require people go into the Apple Store originally to do some fitting measurements and things like that. And so I think they're building toward an infrastructure where they have more hands-on as they build out their virtual reality ecosystem. So I just think this is an early salvo in where they see this kind of spatial computing going.
Good, Courtney.
I don't know what kind of consumer apps are going to develop because, AR and VR has been around for 20 years or so, and there haven't been really any consumer apps that have really come out. There have been a lot of industrial vertical market apps that have been developed, and I think some of the first apps that are going to be developed for the Vision Pro are going to be architectural related so that you could maybe put it on, and since it's mobile, walk around a construction site that just has the wooden framing up and let you see all the finished what the finished building is going to look like as you walk around the framing site. That would be an interesting app to see. As far as other augmented reality sites, apps, other than repairing jet engines and other applications we've seen featured on like HoloLens and the other AR devices, I'm not sure what there is new that would appeal to the general consumer. That's the big question. Is there a consumer app other than just using the virtual space as a workspace? And I think that's kind of just a gimmick and really won't catch on. But other than that, I can't think of any consumer-based apps that would be really great on that particular device.
I think that it'll be interesting. I think that I feel like you will probably see some educational pieces that are like travel through space, that type of thing, travel through molecules, travel through those types of things, go back. Virtual tours will probably be something that people show a fair bit of. Games, of course, will be something that people are going to release out there. Again, it'll be a pretty small market when it first gets started, but the good thing for if you're a developer is that it's a lot of people that are trying to figure this thing out, and they just spent a lot of money on this thing. If you put something out for $10, the chances of selling it, if it's reasonably good, is pretty high to almost everybody. So, so it's a pretty interesting opportunity there. So I think that it will be. I think you'll probably see a lot of those types of devices there. Also, we were just talking about concerts. I think that concerts are really interesting. Because if you get the camera position just right, you could really feel like you're just sitting in front of somebody who's playing to you. So I think that might be a really interesting model there. So we'll see. Next question.
And it's coming in from me. The question is, have you had any luck using Fiverr to edit or create video graphics?
Good, Jason.
No, I have only tried this once, and I wasn't surprised to not be impressed. The best I've used Fiverr for this kind of video stuff is, if they have a core stock animation that you like, generally my challenge is to try to recreate it. But yeah, for $5, they'll crank it out pretty fast.
Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, so Mitchell, you're talking about like one of these services, Fiverr. You pay an incredibly low amount of money, and somebody does a task for you. That's essentially what we're talking about. Say
you had a piece of animation, character animation you wanted to use.
So I'll tell you, my friend Keenan, who was involved in our rocket launch, John's rocket launch. Sorry you're not here today, John. He has found a lot of success, and I'll find out what it is. I just texted him of one of those type services. He uses it for logo creation, and what he does is he sets up a contest. They have a way of setting up a contest, so he gets like 20, 30, 40 different people submitting, sometimes multiple versions. And he says, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a logo for my Jeep and blah, blah, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden he gets an inbox flooded with submissions, and he can go through and say, like it, like it, like it, like it, like it, hate it. And then some of the people will even allow you to say, can you make the tires bigger and the headlights brighter or whatever? And they give another, and then he offers it up. Essentially what he does is he's paying like $50. It's a contest, and the winner wins like $50. And I got to say, it works quite well. And I'll find out which service it is. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head.
You go, Michael.
My one recommendation, I have used it a handful of times, usually for stuff that tends to be a little bit more monotonous that I just didn't have the time to do before a project. But my recommendation would be to be very, very, very specific. Think of it as if you're writing in a ChatGPT prompt, be as specific as possible, because a lot of the things that you kind of maybe already innately know about your project, like for example, if it was a graphic and you know that you're working with a Blackmagic product that's very picky about what you're giving it, they don't know those things. So you need to be very specific. A lot of people use Fiverr to save time. And I would say that the first time you use it, you're probably not going to save time just because you are going to have to go back and forth with them. But I will say that if you do find that one person that understands this is what you're looking for and they can reproduce that multiple times, it can definitely be a great time saver. But the first time, you're probably not going to save time.
And it's rarely $5. It's $5 is like the first entry point, and then usually it's $35 or $50 or $100 or whatever to get what you actually want out of it. So the Fiverr is kind of a front sell for that process. But it is. I've used it a couple times for just some stuff that I just need to put. I need something to put on. Usually a graphic for a 3D object, and I just like Michael. I just don't want to spend time on it. Like I just want someone to build something that's cheaper to pay someone $35 than for me to spend an hour working on it. Go ahead, Chris.
I also wanted to point out that the dollar store, everything's $1.29 now. So people lie about prices all the time.
What? Next question.
Brody Hefner from New York City asking, Major League Cricket in the U.S. built on short form 3 to 4 hour games is attracting major investment, including a planned 34,000 seat venue in the Bronx. How might the technology of covering and streaming cricket differ from that of similar sports?
I think like baseball, cricket needs a lot of commentary because there's just a lot of time to cover there. And so I think that that's the big thing. And then being able to track that ball and understand. And I think that if you're going to do it in the United States, the big thing that you need to do is assume that nobody knows how it works. So, so the main thing is there's a real opportunity there. We've done this with other sports, and cricket is a perfect example. If I was going to do a cricket stream or for a season, the big thing is I would bring in some cricket experts, and I would have a way to do telestration and a lot of other bits and pieces, and really use that time as it's working to really explain to the audience what's happening. Like, this is why this is important. This is what this is. This is how this works. This is how this rule works. And then also be able to do some kind of Q&A that people could post questions, and so that you can answer questions of, yeah, that's why they did that, or this is why. No, that he's not lazy. He just doesn't have to run. I'm always like, why aren't they running faster? Like every time I watch cricket. And so anyway, so it's go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I worked on the first season of the San Jose Sharks broadcasts when they first came to California. And in Northern California, nobody, all but one person, nobody had ever shot or worked on hockey at all. It was quite funny. And the Sharks brought in a director. They hired a guy out of New York who knew hockey quite well. And his job was to sort of inform everybody on, how to shoot it, what the strategies were, how they're playing, whatever. There was one local guy who was actually from the East Coast who knew hockey quite well. And I think people learned quite quickly. And I'm talking about from the crew standpoint, they'll learn quite quickly. It's also, there was another comment about the bikes, the Tour de France earlier. And I think it's very important that we all recognize that we live in a very big global community. And when we say that sport's boring, we're really limiting our global view. There are people that are immensely, passionate about bicycle racing and cricket and all these other sports that to many of us seem boring. There's subtleties and nuances to everything. And the job of a director in live sports is to tell that story in a compelling way that draws you in.
And what I'll argue is that what makes those sports really interesting is understanding what's happening, and I think that's why I think that the discussion during the shows, again, I think cricket is a great example of something that you can, you have time, and time is something you don't have. Like we try to do commentary around basketball, and basketball it can be done, but it's moving so fast the whole time. The only time we had to deal with to talk to what was happening was during the timeouts and during the halftime, were the only times we could really explain things, because because everything else was you just had to get to the next thing. It was always moving. It was always, going down that path. But with baseball, with cricket, with some of these other sports, you have time to talk about those things. And I do agree with you that like, for instance, when I did 26 games of basketball, and when I entered it, I had no idea what I was looking at and didn't really find I was a wrestler in high school. I didn't really know anything about basketball. And by the end, I was enthralled. Like, I love watching basketball now because I understand the plays. Like, I understand the offensive, the defensive plays, where they're trying to scrape guys, off of the coverage, and all those things. Because I had a pro basketball player that used to play for one of the teams explaining how this is all working from the inside, and that made it much more fascinating. So to your point, it's understanding the sport that makes it interesting. Go ahead, Bill.
100%. I will say that one of the challenges I've found, because I've tried to understand cricket 2 or 3 times, but every time I was in that period where I was trying to make sense out of it, I would pop it on my television to watch something on YouTube or something like that. And it always looked kind of exactly the same. And what I mean by that is that even in baseball, which is another rules-based game, you get the sense of the bases, and you can kind of understand who's on which base, and it's now another pitch is going to happen, and the pattern is going to change. Same thing with football. As you watch plays develop, you see that pattern. It seemed to me that every time they came back to the base shot in cricket, it looked exactly the same, and I had no idea where anything was in the game based on that. So I think that is a bit of a challenge visually in portraying. I know people are very passionate about cricket, and good for you, but I wasn't able to come to
again,
it because
I think it's just understanding what it is. And
yeah,
Americans are very simple, because we have baseball and football that are very simple games to watch. And basketball and hockey are, but I mean, those are very easy to understand. Next question.
Next question from. That's okay. Were you going to say curling? Next question from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. Best OBS alternative for Mac: Ecamm Live, Elgato Camera Hub, upcoming Beat Sheet Studio, or others?
By the way, I love watching curling. Anyway, so I'm a big fan. I mean, I have to admit that I like to have external hardware. So I have a ATEM Mini. I don't really like to use software in front of there, because what's nice about the external hardware is that I don't have to worry about what else is running on my computer. I can plug it into a lot of different computers and it just works. I don't have to figure out how it's going to integrate with a different piece of software. It just shows up if it sees a camera, it's going to see the piece of hardware. So I admit that I'm not I haven't been really successful. The one that I've used, when I've used it, has been primarily Mimo Live is the one that I've used when I've done those things. But I think Ecamm, we've had a lot of people with a lot of success with Ecamm. I think that less of us have had. I mean, I don't totally understand at this point, like what it's doing there. The Elgato I haven't used, so I think those are the ones that, and I haven't used the Beat Sheet yet. So I think that, but I know we have a lot of people in our group that are using either Mimo or some are using OBS, and then also the Ecamm Live is there. So next question.
Matt Halverson from Brookings, South Dakota. The Axoon Cineview HE is on sale today at B&H for $364. Is it worth picking up, or should I spend more and get the Hollyland Mars 400s Pro?
Go ahead, Courtney.
I don't know. I haven't used either one of these. The one that's on sale is the HE, which I think is the cheaper version, Axoon Cineview HE. If you look up here, they also have the Cineview SE for $649. So it's more expensive. It's from the same company, and I'm not sure what the difference is. They're both Wi-Fi based dual band video transmitters that transmit HDMI in, HDMI out. This one also has a CVS USB out, so it can appear as a webcam if you plug it into your laptop or PC. They have about 6 milliseconds latency. I read the specs on this one. So it looks interesting for that kind of a price. It can transmit to 4 different receivers at the same time. So they have apps that run on Android and iOS that let you tune in and decode and put an image up on your phone or tablet, and as well as the receiver. The receiver then can hook up to an HDMI port or be used as a video camera into a laptop. So it looks interesting for that price. It's hard to beat the Holy Land. I'd buy it and try it. Hey, if it doesn't work, send it back.
Right. Yes. I would definitely look at it in how it works in your environment, because with a lot of these, when you're not spending as much money on the transmitter, it's a lot more sensitive to metal and all kinds of things. So what I would do is I would do exactly what Courtney did, is I'd buy it and I'd take very good care of it. But test it and see if it actually does, what you expect in the environment that you expect it to work. Go ahead, Courtney.
And the other thing to watch out for, I've been on sets where they use something like this, and it can, since it's operating in the unlicensed 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands, it can wipe out all of your Wi-Fi. So everybody's going to be really mad at you because they can't check their Facebook, when you're transferring.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Pretty sure it's Hollyland, Courtney, not Holy Land. Although that would be interesting too.
Exactly. Next question.
And it's from Chris Fenwick from Emeryville, California, right here on our panel. My grandson called on FaceTime last night. It was really excited to share his first stop-motion animation. Any thoughts and insight on what I can buy him to set him up for success as he moves forward? YouTube channel to follow.
Go ahead, Jason.
My very favorite app for this is from a company that also has an excellent name, Cat Eater LLC. Stop motion video is far and away just, if you ever want to completely waste an afternoon, it's a free app. It's $6 for free, all their things forever. They keep it up to date, and oh boy, is it fun.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
A pack of multicolored modeling clay and a DVD with Gumby shows on it. That should get him started.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Look for a documentary on Henry Selick and all of his animations. He's quite a prolific stop motion animator. Did all the big ones, Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline, a lot of those. It's very interesting, and you can do stop motion animation with almost any still camera these days, digital still camera.
Kevin Parry, also Parry. So Kevin Parry is on YouTube. He's got probably a couple million followers, and he is a stop motion. And he shows behind the scenes. He shows incredible time lapse and stop motion work. So Kevin Parry, and I think it's just that Kevin Parry, YouTube/user/Kevin Parry. His work is amazing. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, his first stab at it was actually just moving something and then picking up his tablet and hitting the button and then moving it and picking up the tablet again. So I bought him a little tripod stand, very short tripod for tabletop work. I got him a couple of inexpensive little tiny lights so he could light it with colored gels in it. And and probably the nicest thing I got him was I got him a little tiny Pelican, to put all of his stuff in. I told him, I always taught you to put your tools away. So, and I said to his mom, I said, he'll probably own that Pelican case for 20 or 30 years. It's the most pro thing I got him, but he was super excited about it. And I got to say, it sparks a certain imagination when you see a kid like really just get excited about something. So I'm looking forward to inspiring him without overwhelming him, And I think that's a key with young kids is you don't want to give them too much where they go, I'll never be able to do that, because you can do that. We've all seen it happen, and but I'm super excited for him.
There's actually one on Kevin's YouTube channel that's easy stop motion with only an iPhone app or with only a phone app, and he's got like a whole little video, not 10-minute video on that. So I would definitely watch that, and he'll show. He does great DIY. Stop motion. So it's probably the place on YouTube to find to be both inspired and to learn a lot about how to do it. He's got his own Discord channel as well. That's just a lot of people and people in that Discord channel are pretty high up in stop motion. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, well, the fun thing about this is it's super easy. You don't need a whole lot of equipment just to be a hobbyist, right? Just start playing with your iPhone camera. But if you want to take it a little more seriously, you just need a tripod, maybe a camera that's a little better, maybe even in getting an older, simple, digital SLR or something that's a little better. But again, you can do it with your iPhone. But basically, a a camera, a tripod, some little staging equipment for lighting, and maybe a backdrop, couple books, but you don't need a whole lot. And then you can kind of grow into it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would highly recommend it. I believe Boink's software, if I'm correct, has their own. They also have a iStop motion. So so our own Boinks, they make also Memo Live. So Oliver has iStop motion. So I would definitely check that out as well. It's a good little piece of software. I've used it in the past. Next question.
Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas, has a question. Any experience with online equipment rental services that allow idle equipment to be rented out, either as a supplier or a consumer?
Go ahead, Michael.
I've used both ShareGrid and KitSplit for quite some time. I have stopped using KitSplit just because I didn't really get too much traction there. But pretty much nationwide, ShareGrid seems to be the kind of standard for this type of rentals. And overall, I've had a really good experience, both as a consumer and as a supplier. As a consumer, I would say it's really great for kind of like adding individual pieces to an existing kit that you have, especially some kind of like random items that are otherwise hard to find. But if you are trying to do like a full kit, like you're trying to do like a full red rental with lenses, mounts, mounting hardware and all that type of stuff, you might kind of find that some are low quality or haven't been maintained very well. So I would really tread lightly there. As a supplier, I would say really kind of have your process for check in and check out down pat, and make sure that you have all of the insurance and that you verified their insurance, especially for larger rentals. Like I said, I have had overall a really good experience, but I did rent out a drone one time, an Inspire 2 that ended up getting, they wrecked it. And that obviously wasn't a super great experience. It was probably a mistake to even try to rent a drone on there in the first place. But overall, I've had pretty good experience with it.
Go ahead, Mike. Mitchell?
Yeah, my friends that are in the rental business called that parking. So if you have like a Sony Venice that you're not using that often, you can park it. But here's the thing. He also tells me horror stories about what happens to gear that gets rented. And if, like Michael was just saying, isn't properly checked back in, cumulative errors and problems and dents and not stolen, but misplaced accessories is a big deal. And overall, you're going to be it's a great idea, but it's going to be a bad practice because you're just not going to like the results.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I've owned a lot of equipment in my years, and I've never rented any of it out to anyone other than myself, because I want to know who's been using it, how they've been using it, and what kind of hours have been put on it. And you don't know what state it's on when it comes back in. And these days, with everything being digital, with lots of menus and submenus to the submenus, you don't know what they've gone in and changed. And unless you go ahead and just erase, the good practice is when a piece of digital equipment comes back, erase it, set it back to the original factory settings, and erase everything that's on it. Is the best practice to do. If you can do that, that's the best way to handle that. But I agree, insurance needs to be covered, and check with your insurance provider, because a lot of insurance providers, if they find out that you're renting it out to somebody else, won't cover it. It needs a separate type of insurance policy to cover it if you're renting it out to third parties. And it's much more expensive.
Next question.
Next one in from David Brady in New York, New York. SAG-AFTRA Rock the City is live streaming from just down on the corner at 44th and Broadway. Any ideas why it's breaking up as much as it is? Wireless? P.S. I can hear it nice and clear from the 11th floor.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, all the picket signs are blocking the microwave signal as they walk back and forth. That's the problem.
I think that these are the kind of things that if you don't really plan them out, then it becomes really hard to get a good live stream. So one of the challenges in that specific location is that there is the cell coverage is all over the place. When you add a lot of people to it, they're all using cell coverage as well. And so most likely what's happening is they might be using some kind of bonded solution like a Live View or a PepWave or something else like that. And those don't work with big crowds, or they don't work as well with big crowds. And so they work great in the middle of nowhere or in a lot of places that just have cell. But once you start adding all those people, it's not their fault. They just don't have the cell sites are being overwhelmed. It doesn't matter when you're sending text or you're calling people, sometimes when you're calling them, but when you're trying to stream low latency video, it is more problematic. The way to fix that generally is if we were doing an event like this, we probably would have scheduled a sat truck, for this. Usually there was a political person that was having some issues with rallies like this, and I fixed it by just bringing a sat truck. It's just like, I'm just going to put a sat truck out there and just point it up. Suddenly everything worked. So sat trucks, as well as using the live view as a backup, but a live view as a primary with a large crowd is a pretty risky solution. Go ahead, Mitchell.
At Times Square is probably the most active RF environment next to being at Cinegear or NAB.
Yeah.
So you have that, and you don't know. You could test it in 1 minute, and then the next minute it's not going to be working for you. So it's a problem.
Yeah, and it looks like a cellular breakup. I mean, that's what I'm seeing there. I just saw it break up a little bit. Good, Bill.
Well, I was just curious, Alex, when a live view or something like that has an onboard antenna system, would remoting the antenna up on a mast or something like that, even a large stand, give you any additional? No, it doesn't.
Not really. What you want to do is what you can do with the live view that we've done in the past is you into the Ethernet of the live view, you give it a you then attach it to something like a KA satellite, or you can attach it to something like a Starlink, and so now it's going to get that higher quality. And you could, or even Wi-Fi, you can connect it, and you can get that higher quality connection, and it'll use that as well as the cellular to make that happen. One way to fix it or to make it better, is to often also increase the latency. So you just increase the latency to 10 seconds instead of 3 seconds or 2 seconds. A lot of times people will get these and they want to be really, really live, so they turn it way down, and that makes it less stable as well. But it's hard to know when you're not there what they're doing or how it's working, and it could be some kind of point-to-point wireless breakup as well. There's just a lot of people and a lot of RF, and this is and the other thing that makes it hard is with all of those people there that are I'm just looking at it right now. It definitely looks like a bandwidth issue because it's all the different cameras. It's happening across different cuts.
It tends to break up when they cut from one camera to the other. So
that's a bandwidth issue.
Yeah,
and part of it is that you, when you're changing, so all those signs and people moving, that's really a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to manage because it requires a lot of bandwidth. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you look out into the audience there, each one is carrying a sign, and signs block all that the RF, its line of sight. So those flat signs can reflect off and cause multipath problems.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
I did pull up the stream here as well, and one observation I'd like to make too. I don't believe that it's a live view. I do think that it is a different cellular bonding solution, maybe through like a PEP link, where it's taking into account, it's trying to give you as much bandwidth as possible, but the encoder isn't aware of the network conditions. Otherwise, you'd probably see like a drop in resolution to try and still get the frames through, but maybe not at such a high resolution. So maybe a live view might actually perform better would be my guess.
Could very well could be. It's and it's an odd solution to if you really want to get out in front of as many people as possible, to use Vimeo as your platform. It's got enough people that it would have trended in YouTube. Maybe they don't want to do it because they consider YouTube the enemy or something like that. But I feel like they would have had a lot more people watch. They probably have 10 times more people watching if they were doing it on YouTube as opposed to Vimeo. Next question.
From Andre Dole in Berlin, the Atomos Zato Connect seems to be a very affordable solution for monitoring and streaming. If using it as a 1080p backup streaming device to YouTube, what other Atomos services would I need and pay as well?
I'm not sure exactly. I have one right here. This is the Atomos Connect. What I can tell you is that it advertises that it can handle UVC, and I cannot get it to see any UVC camera. so I haven't figured out exactly, like, it's there. There's USBs, but I tried it first with the Link 360, and the Link 360 just turns on and off. And then I tried it with some other USB cameras, and they haven't worked. Now, I'm still going to test it with just HDMI out of a camera into this and see if it actually is a good little, to your point, streams well. But that's the only other thing I can think of using it for. And it could be useful in that sense of being able to jump on a Wi-Fi and be able to stream directly. So still looking at it, but it's not good at doing what I bought it to do. So I'm still trying to decide whether I'm going to keep it. I've got another week or so before I have to send it back. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, your UVC problem could be a power issue, because it's got to supply power to that Link 360, 360 Link.
But it wasn't just the Link 360. I haven't put the Brio in yet, but but yeah, every webcam I have in my office, and I'm trying to find a Brio. I know I have a pile of them down at the office, but in my office I don't have a lot of them. But I haven't been able to get anything to show a picture yet. So it's supposed to be webcam. And if it is a power issue, it should be able to handle that kind of power if it's going to advertise that it's going to do it. So anyway, we'll see.
You're running it off the batteries or AC power supply?
AC. I mean, it's a USB. There's a USB power PD input. Mm-hmm. So I've been using that. So I may try to put a battery in and see if it works better. It is a standard like Sony 970 battery or 770 battery that I have plenty of. So I might play with that as well. Next question.
Funsak Dorje from Dharamshala, India, asking, greetings from India. Just learned that the college where we are going to deploy the XR12 with ATEM SDI external ISO has Crestron DSP 1283. I have no experience with DSP. Could you please explain the workflow with the above gear? Grateful, as always.
Crestron, and I don't know if we're, I'm just pulling this up. This is it's a signal processor. And I have to admit, I am not familiar with this piece of software, or hardware, so I'm going to try to come up with this relatively quickly here. So this is a Dante. It's a 12x8 Dante processor. I'm guessing that it's so it's 12 inputs and 8 outputs. It supports Dante networking. So I imagine, it's got so it's interesting. So it has blocks. It's using blocks on the, for the in and out. So you kind of have to build your wiring for it. So you could build that out. So those blocks you just got to solder them, in either the blocks themselves. You can just screw them in if you want to put them in there, but you can get soldered versions of those, and then you put them into a XLR to get that out or balanced. I'm going to guess that it's probably, I don't know if it has mic and line. It's probably just line, but and what it looks like IO. It does have signal processing, but I'm not as it does mic and line inputs. Dante, it'll do VoIP, which I'm not sure. Maybe it might be doing some kind of like SIP 263 or something like that. But it is but it also supports. So it's kind of an all-purpose. I mean, this is a very much of a I guess what I would say is it's kind of a very corporate this is what someone who install, kind of a someone installs stuff would put in. Crestron, the thing about Crestron is that when you get it all set up and someone who knows how to use Crestron gets it all set up, it works amazingly well. If you're hacking through it, it's a little piece of hell. like if you're just trying to change it for every show or move things around or whatever, it's not really what I believe Crestron is really built for, is constantly changing how it works. So if you're going in there to change it, I would say, and you haven't used it before, I'd be careful. It's really, I find that Crestron, I will say I work in some studios where they push a button and it changes everything in the entire studio to be ready for the next show. And it's magical. It's just like this button and it just happens. But an integrator came in and set that all up and they got it all working. And as soon as you start going off the rails, you go, I'm going to wander off. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to rewire something. I'm going to reprogram something. You're now in Never Land with Crestron. It's just, it's not really built for that. And so it's really built for a professional that uses Crestron to set it up for you and make it work. But if you change anything in it, it may not work as well again, maybe ever. So anyway, that's been my experience with Crestron. Next question.
Roscoe Jones from Madison, Indiana is here. Considering picking up an old HV20 camera for clean HDMI out and 20 times zoom, what else might be workable with sunlight for under $250? Zoom preferred over fixed lens.
Go ahead, Mitchell. I'm sorry, not Mitchell, Michael.
I'd be really careful with the HV20. That is a really, really old mini DV camera, and a lot of times HDMI outputs on those are only going to be for playback of already recorded footage. For that price range, I'd recommend looking at the Canon Vixia series. The R600 I was able to find used for a little bit under that, or the Sony CX450. Similar scenario, much more modern cameras, and will get you that clean HDMI out. I'd look at those.
I was like, my HV20s are still worth $250. I was like, they're sitting in some box somewhere. You definitely can take a live feed out of them, and they're actually not that bad. I used to travel around the world with HV20s 20 years ago, and I had them in my studio as overhead cameras. They do work okay as far as those things. They are an interlace output, though I do believe you can, if I remember correctly, you can do PSF out of those. I think you can set that up. It's a weird little setup there, but I think that they will do that. But yeah, they're good little cameras. My first little studio was on HV20s. I go to Courtney.
Yeah, I agree with the Canon Vixia. I have a bunch of the HF R800s. They're a little bit more expensive. There's $419 new, but you can get them sometimes around $275. You can find them on eBay. They're nice and compact. They have HDMI out, although it's mini HDMI, so you can need an adapter from mini to full size. But the HDMI looks good. The autofocus is good. For a general purpose video camera to feed your ATEM or something, it works okay. Color science isn't very good, but other than that, it'll give you a good image.
Next question.
I've got another question. Am I the only one that finds B&H's website the perfect place to search for gear and compare specs?
I do that a lot. I don't know if it's the perfect place. I mean, sometimes I try to go to the website, but I will, to your point, oftentimes I go back to B&H because the website it's over-designed and it's too hard to find the specs for a given piece of gear. And I'm like, I'm just going to go to B&H because it'll just have it in the specs section. like I just can't work my way through the website. So I do agree with you that sometimes they do it better by standardizing it than the companies themselves. Go ahead, Bill.
No, the best place is to fly to New York and go to the B&H flagship store and give yourself like 3 days and get a hotel close by, and you'll have so much fun.
You have to give your friend your wallet, though. Like just give somebody the wallet, and they're going to be the adversary. They're going to argue against you buying anything, and you have to make the case because the B&H store in New York is so expensive. It's so expensive to visit. I mean, there's a certain amount of cost to get to fly there and the hotel. So the flight cross country and the hotel, minor expenses. Like those are like
that's just, $1,000 warm up.
That's not even it's not even the appetizer compared to the meal. Like once you're there, you're like, oh, I need this. I gotta, like there's things that I didn't even know existed that I now have to buy. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was in New York on a shoot once, and me and my lighting guy went in there, and he had a question about, he wanted to buy a little wireless mic for his YouTube channel. Great YouTube channel, by the way. He's a gaffer. Anyway, and he went to the counter to ask some questions. I'm like, this is just going to be a nightmare. And the guy at the audio counter was immensely knowledgeable, super patient, pulled out and let him touch and fiddle with everything. And he would point out things that nobody would know until you own something for like a year. He goes, well, actually, let me show you how this works. And he'd like diddle fiddle 100 buttons, and all of a sudden, it would act and behave differently. It was incredible. And I think that David Brady, I know you're listening, I think you need to pick a date and have an East Coast, at least, anybody else who wants to, have a B&H weekend, junket meetup, an office hours B&H meetup. It would be great. It's fun.
It's very expensive though. Again, and what makes it expensive is exactly what Chris said, is that everybody there knows what they're talking about. So you're used to going to stores where no one knows anything about what they're talking about. And you walk into this store and every person knows every camera, whatever the section is that they're standing at. They know that section exceptionally well. Yeah. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, a weekend meetup may not be a good idea because they are closed on Saturdays. So don't plan on
do it on Sunday.
Spending time on
Sunday's
Saturday
a good day.
There.
Yeah, Sunday's
not
bring up a good point.
Not Saturdays.
Yeah, go ahead. And you got to pay attention to all the holidays. Mitchell?
Sorry. As you're narrowing down what you want, because they've got everything there, you might end up calling them. And I've called them before and said, well, can I do this with this? And he goes, what? You want to do that? Are you crazy? You want this? You know, and it's amazing whether in person or over the phone. You get great advice.
There you go, Bill.
I think we've identified, though, a new job. David, you should do a second side gig as a B&H Sherpa, where you just lead adventures through B&H and tell people what sections and introduce them to the right people in the right.
I never thought of B&H as a tourist. There should be AV. We haven't started doing AV tourism yet. Like take you to the best expendable places, and if you're in LA, we'll take you to Film Tools, and we'll take you to location sound, and that
JCX,
Sammy's camera. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Next question.
From Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Brevard, North Carolina. We talk a lot about AI, and I can totally see how it can make short work of mundane tasks. What I'm curious about is, will we know if the technology goes to a level of true creative? If that line in the sand is crossed, will we notice?
Go ahead, Chris.
I think Tlaloc, the creator of the Tlaloc traversal, I think what you need to do is to create a test, kind of like, what is it called? The Turing test? The Turing test for robots?
Turing test, yep.
Yeah. Create the test. And I think it's an interesting problem. Like you're going to supply a series of questions or inspirations to some sort of an AI, and then, does it yield something that already exists, or does it yield something that is unique? But I definitely something has to be, some sort of metric has to be figured out, designed.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I think Tlaloc brings up a good point, because in my business of voiceovers or on the radio, there's a line where, I can read back the copy and do it a fairly good interpretation, but can it sound like a personality? And that sort of delves into the creative line that Tlaloc's mentioning there. I don't think so. I mean, not in this decade. And I noticed the question came up yesterday about radio personalities being replaced by it. I think that, if you're a newsreader or the weather or stuff like that, you're going to get replaced. Look for another job, become a plumber. But as far as being a personality, don't think they're there yet.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, with generative AI, creativity is not is not an issue. It's the problem, because it's a little too creative. Because it's creating a lot of stuff that's not accurate. It's hallucinating. And a hallucination is just really it being creative and making up things that don't exist. So, if you're writing fiction, it's great, because it can be creative and it can take you and give you suggestions and, a way a story could travel that you may never have thought of before. So in that respect, it can be very creative. Don't depend on it to be accurate if you're trying to have it summarize world history or something. But the problem is it's so creative now, they don't know how to rein in its creativity to make it more accurate. That's one problem.
Go ahead, Bill.
The filter I put this through is my evolution as somebody who works in video with type. At first, I just copied other people who put type on screen and considered that good enough. And then eventually, as my career progressed, I started working with people who understood typesetting better, and the type got much better. Then I started working with art directors who did this for a living in large agencies, and my understanding got even better. And you can't, if you just follow rules and say this pair should be kerned like this, you can get decent results. But boy, you get a real serious type designer or art director, and they throw up an image and you go, that just feels exactly right. And it was because they looked at 100, they knew in their head the 100,000 typefaces and knew what was the right thing to use in every different situation. And they came up with not just one, but 3 beautiful designs for the screen. I don't think AI is ever going to get to that point, and it's that human judgment of a very complex thing based on your creative experience over time. The mechanical stuff, absolutely, and that'll just be wiped away. But that's my 2 cents about it.
I mean, from a creative perspective, I use it to think a lot, like just to think about things. I throw things at the wall all the time just to see what it will produce. And sometimes I find it's not so much that I want what comes out of it verbatim, but it gets me thinking about a thought process that's there. So I think that's how I'm using it currently. I do think that it will will eat up about somewhere between 50 and 80% of the more rote stuff is going to be something that you'll have the AI do. The main thing is that at the higher end of production or creativity, taste is something that takes, I still think it takes life experience. Like, you're making decisions on things that, when I build a great team for a production, every person that I bring in is not doing what I told them to do. They're doing something better than I thought I would do. They're thinking through things for me, and they're problem solving. Every person in that group is problem solving their area based on all kinds of life experience and things you're not going to find on the internet, which means that generative AI wouldn't know it. So I think that there is somewhere in the future it could be doing a lot more, but I think it's going to be a lot longer than people think. People have these long lists on Twitter of all these businesses that are going to be out of business in 3 years. And I think I'm as caught up as anybody, where you see what's going to happen and you think it's going to happen tomorrow, and it turns out it's going to happen 10 years from now. So I think that it's going to take time, a little bit more time. It's doing amazing things now. I make, on a daily basis, I make something on Mid-Journey that I could put on a wall, and I think, oh, this is really cool. But usually, if you look really, really closely, the eyes are weird or something. There's some kind of possessed something there. So you have to be you really have to look at it closely. It's kind of a crazy thing. Next question.
Next question from John Fisher in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Can an Apple Studio display be switched from using a stand to a Visa mount post-purchase? Seeing conflicting info online.
Go, Jason.
Oh, please don't do that. Yes, Backrumors says it can be done for a fee, and nowhere does anybody say what that fee is. So, yeah, technically an Apple certified provider can do it, but don't do that.
Just get the Visa. Don't. Yeah, exactly. Next question.
Talaloke Lopez, Waterman in Brevard, North Carolina. As the theatrical model is pushed into the past, what model of compensation seems viable for the new content delivery methods? Are royalties a thing of the past?
Go ahead, Chris.
I don't know that royalties are a thing of the past, but I think that the heyday of royalties is probably past. I think, if you look at, what the kids who did Friends, what they were making, $1 million an episode and plenty in reruns and syndication. I think a lot of that stuff is going to absolutely change. I know that if I'm a roofer, I don't get money from you every time it rains. I got paid to put the roof on.
Hey, that'd be a really good idea, though, wouldn't it?
It would be a great idea if you could make that happen, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
And just like, in the 60s, and we were talking about this, Courtney, a couple weeks, last week or whatever, about when was the change where television syndication meant, oh, I'm going to get paid forever. Because we know that, stars of the 50s and at least the early 60s, I think maybe most of the 60s, you did an episode of Star Wars and you wore a big green suit or whatever, and you got paid to work, but you didn't get paid to not work. And that changed somewhere along the way. And I think that was brilliant negotiating on the acting unions, et cetera, to be able to get that. But at some point, people look at it and they go, hey, you're done working. I don't want to continue to pay you. I only get paid for the days I sit at my computer. And I realize why they want to get paid. I realize they don't work 365 days a year. I get that. But I think the heyday of royalties are over for sure.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think there's probably just going to be a higher negotiated upfront wage, which is one of the things they're fighting for now, is better wages. Which is for their daily wages, but also residuals. The problem is the market has become so stratified with, streaming and still DVDs and, other kinds of marketing, all the cable television networks that are playing reruns of television shows from the 50s, it's hard to apply metrics to that to reimburse people to calculate royalties. Would cost more than the royalty. It costs more to calculate the royalty than the royalty is going to be to the individual performer once it starts being stratified like that. So they have to come up with a different type of wage model to compensate somebody. Actors have the problem, of course, because their likeness is on camera. So they can only get paid for that likeness and that performance for so many years, and then their face changes and gets older, and the roles change, and they can't be compensated anymore, or they can be overexposed, and an actor can be overexposed to the point that no one will hire him because, oh, it's that guy again. So people that write in the creative, writers have the ability to just develop a pseudonym and write under the pseudonym. No one knows the difference, and they can continue a career for a long time, even in a different market. Whereas actors whose faces are hanging out there have a little bit more of a problem. So that's why one of the reasons that residuals and aftermarket consideration was made to prevent them from going online and doing one thing and never being able to act again.
Here you go, Bill.
So at Comic-Con this year, after one of the things, my friends who I was there with said, come on, meet us. We're in Hall H. Hall H, people don't know, is a gigantic theater, and it's where the big Marvel reveals and things like that happen. And most of that was gone this year because of the strikes. But anyway, I heard that William Shatner is going to be there. So Captain Kirk, and he actually wasn't because of the strike. And also I think his health, he's 93 now. But one of the most fascinating things is they were debuting a documentary that's coming out about his life. And part of it that I watched was him saying after Star Trek, because this was 63 when it started, there were no residuals. And 3 or 4 years after that, I was dead broke. And he talks about watching a space launch on a black and white TV when he was living in his truck in Texas, post-starring in Star Trek. Without this residual compensation process, he was literally broke. And it wasn't until there was a resurgence of interest and Star Trek went into syndication, which gave it a second life, that he was able to parlay that into making some money by convention attendances and things like that. So there really was a serious problem in the early days of people not being compensated for these things that culturally just were vastly successful, and they got nothing in response. So that's one of the things, that kind of story was why residuals started happening, I believe. And it went through that period where it was robust, and people like the cast of Friends made fortunes because they had a stake. I do think eventually the fact that we're in a system where computers can track micro things, I do think some sort of micro participation thing where if you're on the crew or whatever, you have micro points or something like that, that the level of a success that goes to the extremes of something like Star Trek that your work helped create could provide at least a reasonable lifetime return because your work was so successful without damaging the entire rest of the compensation structure for everyone. And I hope they get to that point because I'd like to see as many people as possible participate if it doesn't change the basic economics of everything.
Go ahead, Chris.
2 super quick things, Alex. I see you locked the question. Number one, Shatner is known as being really hardcore about don't take my picture without paying me. And he's doing what all actors should do at the beginning of their career. He's a hardcore negotiator. If you can't say no, you're not actually negotiating. One of the things all of the actors and anybody who works in this industry has to realize that the streaming world, which is part of what is causing a lot of this problem, is we have to remember that when you broadcast a TV show in the old days over an antenna, millions of people can watch it for the cost of one broadcast out. In streaming, your success actually costs money to the people streaming the data. The more people who watch a show on Netflix, the more times Netflix has to stream that same data. And so the business model is being turned upside down because of streaming, but it's also being turned upside down for the streamers because their success, your success on that show actually costs them money because they have to stream that data every single time somebody wants to watch it.
I think part of the streaming problem is that streamers don't know if they're making any money. They don't know if they can make money at this like long term.
They probably can't.
So they probably can't. And so the companies that are best positioned are Amazon and Apple because they don't have to. Like they're selling hardware and other things and everything else. The ones that are the most at risk are the content. The ones that are really leaning into content are the ones that have the most at risk. And so it'll be really interesting to see My biggest concern with the strike is mostly that it will do the same thing that COVID did, which is it'll start breaking spells. There's certain spells of things that we do. Like, for instance, I work on launch events, and I'm afraid that all these events like Oppenheimer and everything else did really well without a launch event. And I'm afraid that lesson will be taken back and said, hey, we don't need to do launch events anymore. We don't need that PR thing. We don't need that. There's a whole bunch of things they may go, well, we don't need all of that stuff to pull this off. So that's the other. I'm afraid that they'll start learning new lessons or new kinds of content that are not related to this. I mean, there's always a reaction. So we'll see how that goes. That's the concern I have is the ancillary stuff. The market will change because there's no content. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, many industries are recognizing the unique advantages that neurodivergence brings to a task, like software quality assurance. Have there been similar initiatives to our industry to bring neurodivergence into the fold?
I don't know of anything really specific to that. There's a link here, which I haven't seen before. So I'd have to look at it a little bit more, but I don't know anything specific other than a lot of folks are able to work in this industry that are neurodivergent because they don't have to, they can work at home. They can do things that are special, that they can make those things happen. So I think that's the only place that I've seen that. Next question.
Next question in from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. I appreciate how well versed in Star Trek the panel is. With that as a background, should we not encourage and support creative, if not successful, attempts at getting us to holodecks?
Go ahead, Jason.
Why do you think we are so obsessed with Unreal Engine and the virtual stuff that we've seen happening, around The Mandalorian and, with Nick Jeshishin? That is our version of a holodeck. So, yes and yes.
You go, Mitchell.
Yeah, first of all, Vic, live long and prosper. What happens in the holodeck stays in the holodecks. To be honest with you, I think that the holodeck concept in a script is a bit of a writer's cheat. I don't respect that.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, when they get the virtual stage to the point where it can actually synthesize props that the people can hold in their hands, then that will be the most similar thing to a holodeck. Finding the whole concept behind a holodeck is that you could create a hologram that you could touch, feel, and interact with in a physical way, which is, of course, defies all the laws of physics for a visual medium, unless you had something that would be made up of 1,000 different little moving parts that could form into any shape or so, and had an LED on the end of each little point, so it could take on any appearance and form any shape. That would be really cool, and hook that up to the computer for hand prompts.
There are gloves that you can feel. They'll tighten where you're touching something.
They'll let you feel, but they don't give you the physical device that you.
Well, when you have goggles on, and these are not even new. This is like 25-year-old technology. When you have goggles on, and you put these gloves on, you can sit there and when you see it hitting in front of you, it feels like you're touching it. So it's been around for a while. It just hasn't been commercially viable. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is back. What recording format would they probably use for an event on the scale of Metallica in Texas? Would it be a rack of AJA Key Pros or a similar class device, or would it be a higher end product?
Probably be similar class to Key Pros to record all the ISOs. They probably record all the cameras on external decks, that usually primary and backup. They might use a software recorder as well. Metallica may also be recording, most likely recording all the tracks, all the audio tracks. I think that they said in the video that they have 192 tracks, in the behind the scenes video. And he said, if you wonder why, there's 4 drum sets in there. And he says, and each drum set has 30 mics. so he said that's 120 of those channels are just the drum sets. So it's good behind the scenes. I would definitely check that out. And a reminder that you can, of course, we're going a whole second hour with Q&A. We've got some great experts here, a great conversation. So if you want to throw some more questions in before the end of the hour, you're more than welcome to. Next question.
From Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. Alex, on Sunday, you talked about a lesson with a professional calling a show and talking through it afterwards. Is this available material? And if yes, where can I see that?
Yeah, we did that with Marcia Kerrigan, and that was live. It was just what you had to be there to do that. I'm trying to work with partners to do it again. So there's a venue near my house, and I'm trying to see, hey, can we bring cameras and have people who want to train to learn to do the cameras and everything else? We just want to shoot the video. We'll give you back the footage. We just want to train people. And then we would try to get Marcia or some of the other folks to call the shows. And so that we can train both camera operators as well as have everybody here watch them. And I'm also trying to angle. There's a big empty building right next to a concert venue, and I'm trying to take that over. I'm always trying to take over buildings. But anyway, to run concerts out of. So we'll see if that becomes viable at some point. But yeah, we're trying to figure out how to how to get a space where we could be doing shows all the time. We have figured out with what we did last year, a little over a year ago, that we were very capable of cutting shows over Zoom. Like it was actually a doable thing. So we hope to keep on taking that R&D down the path. Next question.
From Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California, what percentage of your budget do you dedicate to client relationship?
I don't have any budget to client. I don't have a budget to the client relationship. I just try to be as responsive as possible to our clients, but I don't have a specific budget connected to it. Yeah. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I was just going to say, if anything, it's more of a negative connotation. If I have a really tough client, I might throw an extra 10% in there if I can, because of the aggravation and extra time it's going to take to get the job done.
And go ahead, Courtney.
Oh, you could allocate some of your marketing a budget to, sending Christmas cards, sending a gift basket if it was a particularly large production and it went really well, or, just something to smooth over that client to get them to think about you in the future, so you could put a small amount of money. I've never done anything like that, but some people have. I've received nice cards and nice little gifts from people that have worked with me on projects. So maintaining a client relationship, you can spend some money on it.
I did. Anytime I was out with my clients, I would always pay. I would always make sure that I was the one paying. When I was in with Pixelcore, there were 3 or 4 clients that spent a lot of money with us, and I did take them to Alexander Steakhouse, which is in, and we'll just say that each steak was like $350. It's all Wagyu, and so the night was expensive, but I enjoyed it too. It was good for me too. So it was a good night to do. December was usually a lot of red meat. Go ahead, Jason.
Last decade or so, I have taken my top 5 clients of the year. I usually do this, in that week between Christmas and New Year's, and with a pen, with my hand, write them a thank you note. And it's strange, but it's bizarrely analog, and they really like it.
Yeah. Next question.
Next question from Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona. Does anyone know if you can adjust audio on Instagram Reels? I'm trying to upload a video with dialogue, but would love to put Instagram's music under it.
I don't know if you can. We had the same question around TikTok in the past, where it's at a certain level. I believe inside of the TikTok app, you can duck the audio, but I'm not sure about Instagram's Reels of whether you could do that. And I can see why. So the reason, if you're listening, if you don't use Instagram's, if you don't apply it to the video, then it won't necessarily clear it, or won't clear it. If you embed it in your editor and do it the way you wanted to do it, the problem is it's always designed around people who are less sophisticated and are just want something to turn on. Go ahead, Bill.
Jack, if you just need to do this function and nothing else, you want the voiceover to pop out, there's a little program from the Conversation Network called Levelator, and it is kind of a brick wall. Yeah, but turn whatever the signal up to 100%.
You can't do that because he has to apply the music in the app. He cannot, because it's the way that the copyright works. So he has to take that. What he wants to do is use the Instagram's music underneath it, but it has to be applied. If it's like TikTok, and I'm a little less, it's not. He can't bind it. That's the problem. He can't do it in his own app. That's the issue. Is that it has to be applied in the Instagram Reels in the app, and he can't find the control for it, which I don't think that there is.
My point was just that it'll take your voiceover track and maximize it totally.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could pound your voice. To your point, you could compress it
Right.
heavily, but it won't make any difference to that. It'll just make it really loud and probably hard to watch. Next question.
John Fisher in Oklahoma City asked, did the Strange New Worlds Lower Decks crossover bring you joy?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
John's talking about Star Trek, and Strange New Worlds is a hit. It's a smash hit for Paramount. Lower Decks is a completely different beast, and to put them together, I think, was not faithful to the canon of Star Trek. And if you think that's bad, rumor has it that this Thursday's release of the next Strange New Worlds episode is going to be a musical. Come on. They're doing it as a musical.
Mitchell completely stole my thunder. Yes, it is going to be completely musical, and I'm not sure if I can't wait, but also I kind of can't wait.
I'm really a big fan of musicals as long as they don't sing at all in the musical. Then I think it's great. Go ahead, Courtney.
Hamilton was awesome,
Hamilton's the one exception. Hamilton and The Greatest Showman are the only exceptions to that rule. That I really enjoy those movies. But in general, I would prefer not so much singing. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're
Courtney.
messing with the Star Trek canon here. That's just not done.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got two cautionary words for you. Cop Rock. Look it up. It was a horribly failed TV series where it was a musical version of a police show. Bochco.
Yeah,
I mean,
the real danger of doing any of these things is exactly what Mitchell's talking about. When you disrespect your core fans by doing something silly, oftentimes it breaks the spell, and they may not come back. So we'll see we'll see what happens. Next question.
Next question from Robert Green in Los Angeles. Bill, thanks for sharing the great photos at Comic-Con. What gear did you use?
So everything you saw yesterday was shot with an iPhone 14 Pro, the smaller one, not the bigger. I've spent about 2 years working with that iPhone on just a little monopod. It is so much nicer not to have to carry a DSLR, which I did in my first years. And the computational photographer gets some. This is one of the shots from yesterday. I mean, if you know how to use it, it really is capable of stunning imagery. You just have to pay attention to all of its modes and understand how to work it. But yeah, everything you saw from that was done on an iPhone.
Next question.
Next question from Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. What makes dollies for tripods so expensive? The Sackler ones almost cost a third of the tripod just for 3 beams, a joint in the middle, and tree wheels.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, the tripod heads are really the most expensive part, and durability. Those legs are a lot of times made out of carbon fiber, and that's kind of expensive, or aluminum, which is kind of expensive. And getting joints that lock and unlock easily is.
But I think he's looking at the expense of the actual dollies.
Tripod.
The dollies.
The dolly.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what he's complaining about is how much.
I'm not sure about the Sackler dollies, but the Chapman dollies are quite expensive because there's a lot of hydraulics involved, and they're quite heavy. They're made out of cast aluminum. They have to be heavy, otherwise if you sit on them, they'd fall over. So, and as far as the heads go, fluid heads is a kind of an art to create a smooth pan and tilt. It's quite a bit of a design, and that's why those are about $3,000 or $4,000 for a fluid head.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I've got a $4,000 Sackler Flowtech right behind me. It's carbon fiber. You can get wheels for it for extra dollars, but it's probably going to be with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, but I think he's talking about the dolly. So the dolly part.
The dolly could be with if I got
it. So what makes them? I mean, a third of a tripod cost is actually you're doing pretty well. That's a pretty inexpensive dolly. That's probably just some roller skate wheels with some stuff that's there. Precision. The precision of what it has to do generally is what makes it more expensive. What makes them expensive is that they can't, they have to roll very nice and smoothly over something. So it's getting whatever you're using as a dolly face, those rails have to be just right. The wheels on them have to be just right. And it just takes more time to put that together. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I would say, Stefan, go try and make your own. I mean, I'd say that somewhat facetiously, that there are many DIY solutions. And Courtney, he's not talking about a Fisher. He's talking more like a spreader with some casters on it. But yeah, I mean, what Alex said, precision is what you're paying for, and how well it operates, and can you fold it easily and stick it in the truck. And yeah, but there's plenty of DIY solutions. Go try one of those.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, they're like you said. There's a lot. I've worked on sets where a lot of grips have put together their own DIY solutions with some skateboard wheels and a piece of channel aluminum that holds that holds the tripod and some standard PVC pipe as track. But that stuff bends. It's not precision. It makes noise.
It never really works.
It never really works. And a lot of those PVC, a lot of those urethane wheels, if it's a heavy camera and it's sitting on those wheels, you go away to lunch, you come back, they have a flat side now, the wheels. So when you push it, it's going to go thump, 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 and bump along. So there's a lot of consideration that goes into this design.
What's interesting is that because they're hardware and because there's a lot of competition, especially from China, those Dolly systems are generally not much more expensive than it takes to make them. The margins are not big on Dolly systems because there's a lot of competition. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine from Panama City, Panama. How do you get your foot in the door for streaming services? Been doing a lot of work for free and or low price, but are not recurring.
I think that it depends on how you're putting it together. So, the hard part really is that you have to invest enough that it looks like and I don't know what yours looks like. So yours may look, but how you come across. So, a lot of it is picking the right people, and sometimes you have to be in the right place. But the other thing is it's a matter of being tight, so it's how the kit looks when you show up, what time you show up, how you interact with folks, how you build out. And some of that just takes practice. I mean, I think I probably did. Because we were doing stuff for our own internal needs for streaming first. So we probably did 100 shows before someone paid us for it. But we were doing them internal streams. And so we were doing these shows. I don't know how I would have been able to get the paid shows without that 100. Without 100 shows that I did before that, I don't know how, because when I showed up, it was a pretty big company. And we had been doing some other stuff for them, and it's a pretty big company, and they just, and we didn't screw up the first one. We weren't perfect for the first couple, but not screwing up the first one is super important. And when I say that, it means that it runs smoothly. They see it on the internet. It doesn't break up. They feel relaxed. They feel like you know what you're doing. So all of business and pretty much all of life is a confidence game. People having confidence in you, that you can do what you say you're going to do. And so part of that, even if you get the process done, if they were worried most of the time that it wasn't going to work, or if it was stressful for them, they still may not come back. They may go, this is dangerous. Like one of the things with live streaming is I'm usually pretty careful of only telling the client what they need to know about what's going on. If I know that I think it's achievable, but it's a little messy right now, I'm not going to necessarily expose all that because, this is a messy business, and so a lot of it is, but, having a kit that's easy to set up, having it just get up there, have all the little things that you need. And it's hard when you're getting started because you don't have the money to buy the things that you need. And so it can be really tricky. This is a really hard business to kind of turn in because it is somewhat, if you start off with all software and doing all those other things, a lot of times it's going to break. Like if you're using OBS or other things like that, it's going to break eventually. Because it gets a lot more stable with hardware, and you have to be ready for it for clients to manage that. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Alex, in the early days of the DSLRs, I used to make up shoots. I'd find fun bands in town, and I'd invite all of my shooters that I normally would work with, say, hey, come shoot this band. It's going to be fun. I'll buy you beers. We'll have a good time. No pressure. And you're talking about doing things for free to get good at it. And I started making these videos for these bands, and I got pretty good at it. And a lot of them wanted to hire me, and I realized these people have zero money. So I got too good. They all wanted me to do stuff, and it was just it wasn't super profitable. So I got out of it pretty quick, but it had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
shooting the bands.
Yeah, and then also it's also figuring out where that content might be valuable to somebody else. So maybe charging the people who are making the content or that are in front of the camera, maybe not the thing to do. So maybe it's
exactly,
for instance, I want to do a bunch of concerts here because I'm working on concerts all through the next year, and I need more people. Like I literally just need more people that I know that know how to cut shows and use cameras and do all the things. And so I'm like, I'm just as training ops, I just need to have things to do, and so that's what we're working on right now.
And my whole point was I just wanted to get these guys used to shooting with the DSLRs because we wanted to use them for the picture quality, but they didn't want to. They said, it's not a real camera.
Yeah, exactly. Next question.
Leave it to Chris Fenwick to ask the question in a form of a hand raise. So here we go. Chris, update on the Fiverr discussion from earlier. May I interject?
All right, go ahead, Chris.
I heard back from Keenan. Here's the deal. It's called freelancer.com is what he uses. He says, post it as a contest, be specific in your description and make the contest as long as you can. They will charge you to extend it later. He says, most of my logos I post for a $50 win. And it works really good. Anyway, it's freelancer.com. I think Mitchell asked that question earlier.
Next question. Chris.
Next question from Talalik Lopez Waterman in Brevard, North Carolina. Has ACE been corrected for Ventura?
Go ahead, Chris.
It's working on my system. I have it on several machines with Ventura, and ACE is working just fine.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, a little bit of context. Roga Biba has a lot of great apps, and the backbone of this is ACE, or Audio Capture Engine. It was a little bit weird for Ventura for a little while, but yes, this is the most recent update, which is April 14th. I've had no issues whatsoever.
And I've made no attempt to fix it. I'm just waiting until I eventually I will. I don't need it right now, and I'm just busy. And so I'm just like, the idea of going through any kind of install process on my work machine is not something I'm super excited about. So what I'm probably going to do is what I'm working on right now is getting taking one of my Mac Minis and giving it a mission of being just my Zoom engine, and then I can put all of these things on it, and it's just my Zoom connection device, so that I don't have to have my core computer tied into all this stuff. But taking my core computer out of the mix of Zoom is what I'm trying to do. Next question.
Stefan Fischer from Würzburg, Germany. Does someone have a recommendation for a hearing protection device for concerts that lowers the volume but does not take away the quality of sound?
Go ahead, Bill.
Yes, my recommendation is to always use them if you possibly can, or at least have them available. If you're doing one concert, even if it's loud, it's probably not going to damage you forever. But exposure to high sounds is cumulative over your life. I would do a search on Amazon for musicians' earplugs, not headphones, because you're not looking for like a drummer being able to hear the full mix of the band. In this case, you're looking for hearing protection. So musicians' hearing protection. You will find a wide range. At the high end, $150 to $300 for the kind that you can go to an audiologist and get an ear mold made and really do a good job of lowering the volume of the sound but keeping all the frequencies intact. Down on the bottom end, there are actually some decent ones at $15 to $20 that try to do the same kind of thing. They're less sophisticated, but any of those will help you. If you have to be like a worker at a concert and you're doing a lot of this, you should always have hearing protection in. Your hearing is cumulative over your life, and damage does not reverse itself, so be safe.
Yeah, and it isn't, I will say that it doesn't take much. It's not like you need something that's going to make it super quiet. You need something that's going to take 15 to 20 dB off the edge, and that's really what you're looking for, is not something that's going to remove everything and make it quiet. It just needs to take it down so that it's below 85 dB is really the important thing there. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and I'd suggest something that, like the ones, the foam type plugs that you squish down and expand foam and stick into your ears is one thing, because there are professional hearing protection devices, but they look like this, and you kind of look like a dork if you're at a concert.
I saw someone at the concert last week
wearing those like that. And there are people who take their kids to a concert or something. They don't want to damage their kids' hearing, and they will have those type of hearing protectors. They're designed for industrial use.
The ones that Bill's recommending are pretty low profile, and they also are designed to keep the high end. The problem with the standard earplugs is that they'll knock a lot of the high end out and sound muffled. So, but these other ones will generally be high fidelity. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asking, what's the secret to optimizing a native DAW to record and playback 3-digit track counts?
Go ahead, Jason.
Money. Lots and lots and lots of money. No, really, it's I/O and it's just system resources, and it just scales accordingly.
Yeah, I'd watch the Metallica thing. It's pretty cool. They show that. But there are companies. There's a company called Diablo here in Oakland, and they build Pro Tool rigs that are designed to record concerts. Like that's what all they do. They have a little warehouse, and you come and you pick up a rack, and the rack is about 55 inches high, and it's just got all the Pro Tools I/O that you need, and it's got all of the the computer built in, and you pull it out, and it just does the thing. And usually something like that is what's being used for that. It's not someone's laptop. It's a dedicated piece of hardware that is the Pro Tool I/O. It can do Dante and Matty, and oftentimes even analog for some of these. So those are the things to look for. Next question.
Courtney Gooden in Hollywood, California, and right here in our panel. Anyone going to the HBO camera test screening in LA this weekend?
Man, it looks like all the fun stuff is happening in LA. Courtney, what's this one?
Well, you remember I talked about the HBO camera assessment screening, where they assess these Arri Alexa Mini, the Sony Venice 2, the Red Raptor, Blackmagic 12K, the Arri Alexa 35, and the Kodak 5210 film, 35 millimeter film. And comparison, it's an hour and a half long digital presentation. It'll be at the Linwood Dunn Theater at 1313 Vine Street in Hollywood at 9 a.m. on Saturday. The previous screening that SMPTE held along with the CAS was sold out, and although there were a few seats left. So they're doing another screening of it this Saturday from 9 a.m. to actually it starts at 10.
When are they
in
coming
at
up
9.
here?
Well, it's Hollywood, that's where all the DPs hang out. And that's where they want to see this evaluation. But it's an interesting hour and a half. I saw it the last time it showed. And it's interesting comparison if you want to find out which cameras can handle, overexposure better than and underexposure better in all types of lighting situations, and motion and all of those things. And they're all done. All of the comparisons are done with the same set of Zeiss lenses. So there's high quality glass used, and the same glass used on each of the cameras, and the same setup used. And each shot is composed on all 5 of those cameras, and you get to see them side by side or compared one after the other. So you can really compare and see which ones are going to work the best for you in whatever situation if you're a DP.
Next question.
From Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany. If you have several Macs to support an update, do you give them all the same Apple ID, or do you get different ones?
I'll go, Jason.
Me personally, yeah, I have a lot of Macs, but at the moment the stack of 4 or 5 that are on my desk do all have the same Apple ID. If you really have a lot of them, then Apple has made this a lot easier. You can use their small business deployment, and it will save you a little bit of money. But man, how many Macs are you talking about? That's really the question.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, exactly what Jason said. If you're in a commercial kind of circumstance, I wouldn't put them under my personal ID, but it is incredibly convenient to have Apple know which computers are mine. All my devices are linked to my Apple ID. That is how Apple manages everything. So it's something you should do carefully and do once if you want to get in that ecosystem. In other words, don't change your Apple ID willy-nilly, because it's hard to get things like purchases of iTunes and other things that you've done through the course of time transferred from one Apple ID to another. So you should do it once, do it right. And I think putting all your devices under that just makes it easier for Apple to support you and for them to know. I mean, it's been really nice to be able to go on and find old computers that I've sold and just get them out of the system. And then everything from that old computer is gone, and I don't have to worry about it showing up in my records anymore.
I just love the fact that I jump on, I log into iTunes, or not iTunes App Store, and I hit go, and it just installs all the most of the software that I use on that computer. It makes it much easier. Next question.
Looks like our last one in from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Comment on Financial Times Sam Altman's fission startup Oklo and life extension startup Retro. Alongside OpenAI and WorldCoin, it may reshape society and will draw regulatory scrutiny.
I'm surprised that it's fission. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I looked at the Oklo, which is a fission reactor, and I think it's a fairly old type of a liquid metal type reactor, breeder reactor. So it can take its spent fuel and load it back in and use it again. So, and these are fairly small reactors, I think, that they're looking at building for lower wattage rather than supplying a whole city with power, but maybe just an area or a smaller or an industrial type situation, or if a remote facility out in the middle of nowhere, you could have one of these small breeder reactors to generate your power for plants.
For some reason, I'm imagining a fission reactor on a backpack. Like I can just set it down. I mean, this thing will last all weekend. I'll just drop a little piece of. I got a little bit of plutonium in here. I'm just going to drop it in. Go ahead, Chris.
It's the Mr. Fusion that goes in the back of your.
Exactly. Yeah, why not?
How are we not like it's the we don't all these actors don't have enough. Nothing. They don't have anything to do right now. So let's get them to do some commercials for us. And Mr. Fusion. Mr. Fusion would be perfect.
Backpack, lunchbox, and pocket.
Yeah. Go ahead. Don't drop more than 6 feet. Go ahead, Chris.
So Altman's got Oklo, and there's Retro, and I think Scooby-Doo had one called Rutro.
That's it. If Octo goes bad, then it's Rutro. Go ahead, Jason.
How am I supposed to follow that with something serious? Okay, if you're ever in Portland and actually want to see a nuclear reactor, Reed College has one, and it is very small, but it is insanely cool to watch. I wouldn't put a backpack on with a reactor, but I mean, Fenwick is absolutely going to be modeling it in one of these LA trade shows.
When you can see that you're wearing the backpack, but you can see the glow through your chest, you know that probably
the glow means it's working.
It's leaking. It's leaking.
Constant X-rays available, though.
Yeah, exactly. All right, go ahead, Chris.
Just something to ponder. I'm eternally fascinated with all of the stuff that's going on in Congress with these hearings, with all these UFO sightings and whatnot. What if Elon has put all this technology into these 33 rockets on the bottom of the giant booster, and we're like on the verge of being bestowed upon humanity unimaginable technology that is about to become true, and all this rocket technology is just going to be thrown out. Just
where do you think all the rocket technology came from?
No. I mean, I truly believe. I've said this before. The day before any technology becomes a reality, there was a time when you couldn't, pick up a thing and talk to anybody in the world. There was a day before Kitty Hawk when flight was impossible. There was a day before Tranquility Base when walking on the moon was impossible. All these things are impossible at one point, and then they become commonplace. Well, not Tranquility Base, but you know what I mean. So I think it's at least feasibly possible that some sort of technology that did allow some sort of alien visitation to humanity over the last millennia. What if we're on the verge of that being disclosed?
Chris, are you talking like anti-grav or something like that?
Yeah, why not? Anti-gravity or...
I'm saying slingshots.
It could be slingshots. It could be, folding over space and time, quantum entanglement, whatever you want to call it.
Spinning.
There will be a day when we know more than what we know today, right?
I'm still caught up with the idea that teleportation is actually destruction, copy, print.
Yeah.
Like that really,
It's not copy-paste, it's move.
If you can disassemble and reassemble everywhere, why can't you disassemble and multi-copy everywhere?
Yeah, it's like
I watched an interview just the other day.
30 of you come out the other side.
Yeah,
one of you gets
I watched an interview
digitized.
just the other day where the
weird.
guy said, everything you've seen in Star Trek is within we can do already. You just don't know it.
Okay, I'm not sure. I'm not going to buy that yet. All right. Great discussion. It was good 2 hours of Q&A. It's closer to a Sunday than a Tuesday, or Monday, but it was good. It's good 2 days in a row. All right. Thank you. Or is it Tuesday today? Today is Tuesday, isn't it? I was thinking it was Monday. It's just been one of those weeks already. Great discussion. Thank you to the panel for being here. And it's good to have you here, Michael. So welcome to our little show. A quick reminder that the show, we will be doing more show practice at noon Pacific Standard Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Eastern Standard. You can see the link in the email that goes out. So if you're interested in, like Michael, jumping on the panel with us and being part of this panel and be part of this discussion, and he did a great job. You did a great job on your first day out.
Yeah, well
had some
done.
good well thought process. So this little practice session that we're doing is working. So anyway, so if you're interested in being a part of the panel, we'd love to have you. And thanks to the panel again. Thanks to the producers for all the great questions. Keep us going forward. And thanks to the incredible team that makes this happen. We have a development team, the management team, the production teams, all of the teams that make this happen. We really appreciate all of your contribution. And we traveled, I got some, I think, 115,000 miles. It was a busy day today. 115,000 miles. That's 186,000 kilometers. And that is more than 918 million bananas for scale. All right, let's jump into After Hours.
Next company is going to be called Red Shirts Incorporated.
I so want to do a company called Rutro. Like, how did someone not have a cut?
Oh, yeah.
Casey probably has that patent.
It should be a problem. It should be a problem solving company. Like, we just solve problems.
Perfect variety headline. Retro goes Rutro.
Say Rutro, call us.
Still like Crikey Inc.
These close.
On a backyard
Look like
nuke.
something. They remind me of something. I'm not sure.